So I've been asked to talk about what Good Friday may mean in this particular space in which we are in, facing together the COVID-19 pandemic. And I am grateful to do so because it helps us to do some things that are perhaps a corrective to our moments, typical moments of celebrating or suspending time together on Good Friday. I think obviously right now, COVID has done some things for us that our preaching cannot do now because we are away from each other in our worship spaces. We are called to find a way to bring our faith into our homes. No matter how grand or great we preach on any Sunday, sometimes those sermons that we preach that seem so earth-shattering and earth-changing in that moment have already died before they have gotten to our homes. On the one hand, because they are just moments of expression. On the other hand, I am also aware that some people take the toxic work and the words that have been said in pulpits on Sunday and bring them to their homes and hurt people who are in their families and in their communities. I think both of those things are realities. I think also that COVID has given us a sense in this moment because of the pervasiveness of this pandemic. It's given us a sense that this is not just an individual moment for piety or reflection. I think so often as we come to Good Friday, we fail to see that the suffering is not just the suffering of an individual as we see Christ crucified, but it is also an acknowledgement in this time of COVID where the suffering is so great that we are all pulled into this moment to realize that it is not just the individual who suffers, the community suffers. It is not just the nation that suffers, but it is a world that is under the pall of this moment. And that wherever their people are in cities or collectives where the possibility of passing the virus one to another is real, uh, all over the world, irrespective of race, irrespective of religion, people are, in fact, uh, under the same thing right now. You have to know on this Good Friday that you are not the only one who is suffering, but the suffering is pervasive. I, I think also the struggle is to struggle with prematurely calling this Good Friday. I have been to Good Friday services and where the seven last words tradition is practiced, and every one of those, every one of the preachers say their word and then let Jesus die, and then they raise Jesus up. And for seven iterations, Jesus dies, Jesus gets up, Jesus dies, Jesus gets up, Jesus dies, and Jesus gets up. I think we are uncomfortable with the suffering, to be honest. And I think we have to find a way to really not settle for, but settle into the reality of the predicament we find ourselves in. And I think also in doing that, in settling into the reality that we are in, not settling for it, because we always can do better, always think better, always try better, but as we settle for it, we have an opportunity to ask what is the nature of suffering, that it is not individual. It teaches us, hopefully this moment teaches us a moment of compassion and calls us to a place of repentance for the ways in which suffering that has gone on every day, not just human suffering, but the suffering of the whole of creation, for us to ask forgiveness for missing out, for, in effect, being the disciples that failed to show up at the crucifixion. And so I think as we think about this, although it is a very uncomfortable, it is a very anxious, a very uncertain time, dealing with reality and the scope and the scale of what we experience now can only help us, those of us who survive it, to speak about what it took to get to the other side. And I mean the other side of the pandemic. Although our lives will ultimately be altered, forever altered, I think it's also a reality that we should struggle in this moment to have compassion. I hear my forebears sing, "Were you there when they crucified my Lord?" And I think in this moment, as preachers and churches, we have to ask a question. Were we there when the dispossessed, the poor, the uninsured, the elderly, the frail, were we there? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble. Good Friday is a great opportunity to give the one gift we can give to all people now. That's the gift of compassion, not condescension. Compassion and empathy. And to wrestle with the reality of suffering. I do think it is true that so many of us are too quick to get to the tomb. I think it's easier to do that than to deal with death. On this Good Friday, we should not just deal with the death of Jesus, but the death of so many thousands of others, hundreds of thousands of others, as so predictions go, and to find a way not to escape it, but to be present with people.